love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, guys? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back again with an episode of The Insight. This one's going to be for the Russia card in Moscow, which is coming up in a few days' time. Before we get into this episode, I say it every week, I'm going to say it again. If you disagree with anyone on the screen, that's completely cool. If you agree with anyone on the screen, that's completely cool. There is no right or wrong answer. If you're not inside the octagon, you simply have an imagination and that's it. Last week, my imagination told me Darren Till. A lot of you disagreed. I was right. This week, I may put someone on the screen that all of you agree with me on, and I could be wrong. So that is literally the sport we love. If it's not a mismatch, then it's a winnable fight for both guys or girls. That being said, let's get into the episode, and we're going to start with my underdog. Now, I've only got one underdog on this card. Originally, I did have two. Pani Kianzad, who is basically the same price as Jessica Rose Clark. That was my first underdog. But the only other underdog I'm taking is Greg Hardy. Now, you know, I just said for last week, a lot of you disagreed on with Darren Till. I feel a lot of you are going to disagree on this one too. And it's completely understandable. I could be very wrong on this pick. So, on paper, if we look at this on paper, it's very, very evident who wins this fight. And maybe we get the same fight that we see on paper inside the octagon. Maybe we do. Because if we're looking at it based on paper and credentials, Alexander Volkov should destroy Greg Hardy, right? But if it doesn't go down like that inside the octagon, then, you know, this is just the sport we love. So Alexander Volkov is a very good heavyweight. He's tall, he's quick, he's a good kickboxer, has good grappling credentials himself. And Greg Hardy, you know, just this guy who just keeps getting into shit, basically. Like, he just can't cut himself a break. But let's talk about his fighting abilities. So, I think Greg Hardy understands styles make fights. So, you look at him against Crowder, you know, just a madman. And then you look at him against Ben Sassoli a few days ago. And he's trying to circle on the outside, use the calf kick, and he done very well. And that's no coincidence. Greg Hardy is training at ATT, good coaches, good fighters there. He understands styles make fights. So can Greg Hardy implement the same game plan that he did against Ben Sassoli a few days ago? No, he can't. If he does, Alexander Volkov is going to pick him apart. Now, Greg Hardy just has to be a madman. He just has to simply close the distance and make Alexander Volkov fight. And if he can find that big shot, he has a chance of beating Volkov, in my opinion. One thing I have noticed as well, when Volkov throws more than 2 strikes at a time, he comes in very square. Head just left on the same center line. Like, he throws a punch, throws another, and then the third one comes in. In that split second to 2 seconds, his head is just on the same line coming forward. If you go back and watch the Timothy Johnson one, Johnson caught him clean, very close. Derek Lewis most recently, obviously Volkov basically won that fight, but if Greg Hardy keeps himself in this fight and keeps closing the distance or looking to counter, he has a chance, man. It just takes one big shot. And at plus 210, 220, I'm willing to take that shot with Greg Hardy. He was a plus 250, so he has dropped a little bit. But still, plus 210, I'm willing to jump on that with Greg Hardy. Okay, moving on into parlay finishers. So this one's going to be a parlay builder. It's a little bit risky, I'll be honest. I'll give you the 2 names first, Ramazan Ameev and Zabit. We'll start with the parlay builder. So the reason why I see this one being a risky one to really build around is because I pretty much respect Tony Martin. I think he's a good guy. He's a black belt, stepped up from 155, now fighting at 170. He's done very well there, you know, only losing to Damian Maia, which is very respectable. So yeah, it's a tough one. Both guys primarily grapplers. Ramazan Emeev, he's got that Sambo freestyle wrestling. I believe he started training in freestyle wrestling at 6 years old. Used to fight at 185. So that's maybe the story here. Tony Martin used to fight at 55, stepped up, good grappler. Emeev used to fight at 85, stepped down to 70, good grappler. I think the strength is going to be the difference, I feel. Damian Maia, obviously a very, very good grappler, right? But he had to evolve when it comes to wrestling. So a lot of pros in the game spoke about it leading up to the Askren and Maia fight. Damian Maia really became a good wrestler inside the octagon, and that's how he was able to submit so many people. I feel Emeev is a very strong, intelligent wrestler. So yeah, if it gets into the clinch, man, I know Tony Martin is, a respectable guy, a black belt, primarily jiu-jitsu orientated, but I think Emeev is going to get the better in the clinch. And when you look at the fight standing, Tony Martin is very reliant on his right hand. And Emeev is a very composed, patient striker. So I see a stalemate in the striking, but the clinch, I think Emeev is going to end up on top. So Zabit would be the parlay finisher. Now, the reason why he's a parlay finisher is because, he's the last fight of the night. Any parlays he's in, he's going to be the finisher. So Zabit is a parlay finisher. Now, the reason I'd like him as a finisher is because I believe he will win this fight for one. And if he doesn't win this fight, his opponent is plus 220. So, it's a good price to cover on. The trouble we're going to have with that one, though, is does Calvin Kattar win by TKO or decision? I think we can pretty much eliminate submission because that would just be insane. But yeah, this decision or TKO is hard to decide. I feel like most people would be pretty split on that too. So that comes down to personal preference on how you'd cover. But at the same time, plus 220, you could get that outright. So you wouldn't even have to pick a way for Calvin to win. You could probably cover outright if there was so much profit coming in on Zabit with the last fight of the night. Now, if you can't cover because there's not a huge amount of profit coming in, I think Zabit is still a safe bet to ride on. If you haven't listened to my full card breakdown, I basically speak about Zabit was put into a boarding school around 12 years old, and he spent 11 years there, an MMA boarding school where they trained 3 times a day, a Sambo professional. He's also trained in Sanda, which is Chinese kickboxing. Just a very well-rounded, intelligent guy is Zabit, and I think that's a safe bet even if you can't cover. So moving on into my most confident pick. Now, my most confident pick record with this series is pretty good. It's like 15 out of 18, it's pretty decent. So I'm probably due a loss soon. And if it's going to come, it's probably going to come on this card. However, I'm still going to stick with who I believe to be my most confident pick. Shamil Gamzatov. Now, I really like this guy. This guy's a Russian. Now, the difference with this guy is he's a Dagestan kickboxing champion. So, arguably one of the better kickboxers coming out of Dagestan, Russia. Also, just like the other guys, he's trained in Sambo. He's a brown belt in BJJ. So, this guy, I really, really like the look of. He's fought a couple times in PFL as well. Confident power in his hands. Likes to trade the hands. I really like this guy. I'll be honest, I'm really excited to see this guy debut. I think he could pretty much beat Klidson wherever the fight goes. Maybe if the fight hits the mat, maybe Klidson will have the advantage there, seeing he has trained in BJJ for so long. But even then, I'm still confident Gamzatov can compete there. I really like this guy. As a kickboxer, a guy who's willing to stand and trade hands. Yeah, Shamil Gamzatov is my most confident pick. Some of you may disagree with that. It's a little bit risky, but 15 out of 18 most confident picks. I'm just going to keep going with what I think. And Shamil Gamzatov, if I had to put my money on anyone, if there was only one person I could put my money on, I'm going to go with that guy. So, yeah, as always, guys, leave your comments. Most confident picks, underdogs, finishers, builders, all of that good stuff. Appreciate you all. Peace.